Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. Remember, this program is for informational purposes only, but we are here to make sure that you understand just how important your health care is. As you can see, we have our full panel today. We want to say thank you for stopping in. We want to remind you to and share with all of your friends and families and invite them to come along and be a member of Couch Conversations with the Doctors. We're going to go around the panel really quickly, as we do always, and we're going to introduce our panel guests. I see we have that famous urologist of the stars, Dr. Terry Mason here. Dr. Mason, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone here?
I don't know who that urologist of the stars is, but I'm Dr. Terry Mason. And I'm grateful to be here, and hopefully we'll add something to positively contribute to the conversation. And thank you, Congressman Davis, and for providing this, and Nikki for making it happen. And I'm always honored to be with my colleagues.
Thank you so very much. Linda Johnson says good evening to everyone. Virginia Knight says good evening to everyone. By any chance, is that Dr. James Miller? I see the man who says that I threatened him to be here, but he has such a wealth of knowledge for us. Dr. Miller, you're muted. You're still muted. Unmute yourself, Dr. Miller.
Yeah, good evening, Nikki, and good evening, everybody. I'm glad to be back today. I missed last week, and I heard that you guys had a very deep and interesting conversation regarding fatherhood and mentorship. And I'm sorry that I missed that, but you got great review from people that I spoke with, that they were really excited about the discussion. So I hope today's discussion is just as interesting, and that we can continue to add and to continue to answer questions.
Simply fantastic. Is that my coworker I see there, Dr. Douglas Graham? Dr. Graham?
Again, I want to thank Representative Davis for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm a retired physician. I've worked in the Chicago area for 30 years. I'm going to try and answer your questions if I can.
Wonderful, and thank you. To the weight loss guru, the family medicine doctor, our very own Dr. Tony Hansen.
Always happy to be here with you guys, and excited that we're in the middle of the summer, halfway done, unfortunately, but let's continue to be healthy and share knowledge and grow together. So always happy to be here. I appreciate Danny Davis for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much. To the doctor who has that tagline that she keeps it 100, that's our very own Dr. Maya Green. Dr. Green?
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for having me. Also, thank you, Congressman Danny Davis, for having me. And to my esteemed colleagues, it's always a pleasure to be here. Excited to talk about what's next now that outside is open back up. What do we do next? Where do we want to go as a community? So thank you for having me.
Great. To our very own Dr. Pete, the doctor who is that information specialist, that infectious disease doctor, that family medicine practice doctor, the one who has the open arms to all. Dr. Pete?
I'm gonna do like Terry said. I don't know about who all that is, but I'm thankful to be here, and I want to thank Congressman Davis and Nikki for providing this platform. Looking forward to another vibrant conversation. And Dr. Miller, it was one last week, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yeah.
And to the one who makes this possible for all of us to be here on today, as Curtis Jones says, good evening to everyone, and Linda Johnson is laughing. They're so humbled, Linda, as you can tell. To the man who makes this possible for us all, the one that teaches us each and every day that health is wealth, that's our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis.
Well, let me thank the group, and let me thank all of you for being here and being with us. I want to congratulate my homeboy, Dr. Britt from Arkansas, because I was listening to he and Dr. Mason on Sunday morning, and Dr. Britt's granddaughter is an Olympian in terms of being a great gymnast, and is just moving through the ranks. And So I want to congratulate him and his family on her achievement and her success. I also want to just mention that over the weekend, I had a tremendous experience of attending the memorial service for a woman named Sally Johnson. And of course, many of the old timer activists were there because Sally was the first woman that Harold hired when he became mayor to be the head of information for the city of Chicago. And Sally passed away. And Carol Mosley Braun and myself, a guy named Bennett Johnson, who was one of Harold's running buddies, and Zenobia Black, who's the wife of Tim Black, who's 102. And Tim didn't make it to that event, but he still makes it to a lot of them. And we just had ourselves a great time reminiscing and recounting some of the experiences that we have had. I also want to mention that we're not out of the woods in terms of the corona pandemic, and we are urging people to continue to follow all of the health protocols. I will announce that we have 2 events coming up. One is going to be on July the 7th, I believe, at the Grace Memorial Missionary Baptist Church, where we will be having a vaccine and food giveaway with Reverend Marvin Hunter and a number of other individuals, but Reverend Hunter and the members of his church have invited us to do that. And then on July the 9th, we have another one with a group of motorcycle clubs who, and you know, these are macho men and women, they're both, but macho men oftentimes ride motorcycles, but they have asked us to do a vaccination activity with them on July the 9th, and we're going to do it right at our office, right out in front of it. So we're still trying to get as many people vaccinated as we possibly can. So anybody listening, if you have not already, although I don't know hardly how you could be listening and watching this on Monday night and not be vaccinated. But if there is anyone, there's still plenty of vaccine left, and it's waiting for you. All you got to do is hold your arm out, and they're ready to stick you. So it's good to see everybody. It's good to keep moving. Thank you all. And Nikki, I guess we're really ready to roll.
Okay, wonderful. We want to say hey to Sandell Scott, who says hey to everyone. To Audrey Jaycox, who says good evening, everyone. Bonnie Schmetley, Sister Bonnie is here, and Leanne Harris is here sharing with us just as well as we talk about couch conversations with the doctors. Our first question for the evening says, what is the Delta variant of COVID-19, and should we be concerned? CNN shared it's more dangerous.
Yeah, this was the previously called the UK variant. They called it B117, but we knew that this particular variant was pretty infectious, which is the reason why we were and still are, through our courageous congressmen, encouraging people to get vaccinated. To date, we don't have data that the vaccines are not effective against this particular variant. So what do I mean by that? Simply said, if you're vaccinated, you're protected against this variant. If you are unvaccinated, those are the people that we are particularly concerned about, where this particular variant could, send our numbers back up again with the non-vaccinated folks.
I just want to support what Dr. Pete said, but this particular variant is a much better spreader than all the other variants have come to pass. Yeah. And the other thing recently now, the only people who are dying from COVID are ones that have been vaccinated. So you want to put the two together. You want to protect yourself and get vaccinated.
Maya, you look like something wants to come out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was not in the time. I was going to say, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Mason.
No, I was going to just say, you got to remember that these viruses want to live and they want to spread. That's what they do. And what they'll do is they'll change themselves so that they can find a host. They're looking for somebody to be a host so they can reproduce themselves. So the good news is that the virus has already been mentioned by my colleagues, that this vaccine will protect you against at least the variants that we're aware of at this point in time. So that's the only defense you got. And so it's important that you take advantage of it while you can.
Maya?
Yeah, I definitely agree. So just a little background, taking it back to the basics, what we know works is getting the vaccine, and the vaccine ultimately protects you against hospitalization and death, right? As Dr. Pete and Dr. Mason have already said, and the CDC expects the vaccination or the problems from this Delta variant. You're like, should you be worried? Definitely, we all have. There was no point where we have to stop. We get to stop being vigilant about making sure, like Dr. Mason said, the coronavirus of any strain lands in my community. That means I get vaccinated, I wear my mask in public places, I keep my social distance, things like that. Now people are making masks optional. Occasionally, I still wear my mask, because Nikki gave me some masks that were cute, right? And it's still in style, so I can. It's like rock and white after Labor Day. Is it Labor? Yeah. If it's cute, then just keep doing it. Because who's gonna stop you, boo? But the other thing is, I'm protecting every time I adhere to those things we know work. I am protecting my family and my tribe against the virus. So should we be concerned? Yes, there was never a point where they said stop being concerned about any of the variants, right? And then, like Dr. P said, the reason, or Dr. Grimm, I can't remember, Dr. Grimm, I think, said, the reason why we're so worried about this one is because it spreads easily. It's easier to jump from one person to another host, like Dr. Mason said. And to keep myself from being a host, I can do 4 things. Get vaccinated, and if you got the 2 dose, the studies show that the full protection comes 2 weeks after the 2nd dose. In Chicago, we have a large percentage of people that only got 1 dose. Go back and get that 2nd dose. That was the first thing. Wash my hands, get that thumb. Second thing, wear my mask, especially when I'm in public places. I know they said, hey, you can go maskless, but why? When your mask is so cute, why? And then the 4th thing is I'm keeping my 6-foot physical distance, but staying socially connected in so many ways, including the one that Nikki, you put together this forum. So thank you.
So Nellie King says, good evening, everyone. And Walter Jones says, teach the people. I think we've answered questions 2 and 3, but since they are from 2 of our pastors who watch and have very large congregations that they've been trying to educate about COVID, I'm just going to read their questions, but I think we did answer them. But if you think we didn't, just chime right in. Question 2 says, the number of new variants rising in Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, Wyoming, and a few other states. Should Illinoisans be on high alert? And I think we kind of answered that when we were talking about just make sure you get vaccinated.
Yeah.
You got to stay vigilant. And number 3 says, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting when you tie the correlation between those states and how they may have been the states that didn't completely believe that this was a real thing, and so they were not doing all those mitigate infectious mitigating strategies. They were pretending like it didn't exist, and so now we're seeing the fruits of that labor, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to be said when you take science for science. It is what it is,
I thought I was on mute when you said that, Dr. P, because you know what? You brought it up. Let's get into inequity. Let's get into that belt that they have a hard time getting Medicaid. They have the highest rates of African Americans and Latinos having HIV. African Americans and Latinos having diabetes because highest rates of barriers to access, right? We saw them have high rates of lack of ability to get vaccinations in certain communities. In fact, I think I read something that said about, I'll get the number, 35% of those states are vaccinated, where 46% of states overall get vaccinated. So guess what? This didn't just start with COVID. This is our pathology in America. I be talking about it. Then we're going to publish some articles and we're going to be all surprised about the same stuff we have been doing for centuries. Let's get into that inequity. You brought that up, Dr. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Yep. And so anything we can do, and being in Illinois, should I be concerned? Absolutely. Guess where my family is from? And if we go across these African-American families that came to Chicago, we are from Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. My family's from New Orleans, Louisiana, and Greenwood, Mississippi. Let's get into it. So as long as we got, and then airlines open back up, we about to go travel and see. So absolutely. And that, believe me, that Delta variant will get right on that plane and come right to Chicago, So yes, let's always be protective of a tribe.
Maya, something else that you mentioned about the HIV rates in those states. And it's funny how Illinois, amongst all the Midwestern states, we resembled some of those southern states. So it's like, if you think about how deeply purple those, if you look at the CDC slides and how densely populated the HIV rates are in that Bible Belt of the South, Illinois looks a lot like those states, and we stand out amongst the Midwest states. So this person is very astute for saying that.
All right. Evelyn Shelton says, I've been fully vaccinated and has been since April, and I may never take my mask off again, especially on the plane. That third question says, does the current approved vaccines protect us from these new variants? And Dr. Pete shared that information. And are there reliable sources that we can find on the internet for information? Basically, that's what he's saying.
Yeah, I always say the CDC is a great place to start. I would say the NIH website, but that might be a little bit more complicated. But I think the CDC is where you want to begin.
Yeah, let me just throw in another little tidbit. When we're concerned about those southern states, but right in our area, there are some of our communities almost as bad. When we look at everything as a whole, Illinois in Chicago looks okay, but when we started looking at specific communities, then we find that we have some of these same problems that we have to really we got to really work a little bit harder and figure out better ways to get more people vaccinated. Because, like I said, that's the whole look pretty good, but inside of the process and inside of this, there's a certain segment of our community that look just as bad.
I'll only add that when you think about the Delta variant, and you think about India. And when I watched the news and saw how devastating this virus has been to India as an example, the question is, well, why? And it's very simple for all those who are still hesitant about vaccinations, because they didn't have the vaccine. I mean, it's really that simple. So we were about 10% of the COVID types that we had in the US were this Delta variant. Now, and within a week, it's now 20%. It doubled. So you can only imagine where it's going to be a month from now or a week from now. So the point is, you know, for the first time, I actually went to multiple stores this weekend, and I was shocked at how, you know, things have changed, and a lot of people weren't wearing masks, and that's fine because the rules have changed. My hope is that those people were vaccinated. If you're out there thinking everything's okay and you're not vaccinated, you are absolutely as vulnerable as those people in India, and you are absolutely as likely, particularly with this Delta variant, to succumb to that and be very sick and be and the death rate's higher and the transmissibility of the disease is higher. So please, if you're still feeling that the vaccine is not the answer, I would argue, and my colleagues would argue, that that is the only way to mitigate the term my brother Pete used, to mitigate the risk, because guess what? The winter is coming, and it's very likely that things are going to escalate again. And if anything, I'm looking for my third dose. I'm looking for my booster dose, and I'm hoping that we come up with that, because in the very near future, they're doing studies right now to allow us to change the vaccine a little bit so they can handle some of these variants. So please, if you're still on the fence, please heed our warning that this is a serious matter. I've lost patients in their 30s. I've lost patients in their 80s. This is not an age issue. It's an issue of trying to do everything you can to protect yourself and your family.
You know, Dr. Hampton, I was going to say, my mother, who is from Arkansas, always, you know, there were 10 of us. And so, you know, folk in them days always had a way of saying stuff that would illustrate the point. And she would say, y'all don't believe fat meat is greasy, do you? And it took a while to sort of figure out what that meant sometimes. But that's what we're saying. If you know, this ain't church. This ain't what we're talking about. Has nothing to do with what you believe. Belief is for church. We're giving you what I was taught with the actual facts. Now, whether you believe it or not doesn't change the facts. So you can not believe in taking vaccines. I mean, but I would say my beliefs for church, but not for vaccines. We need to be clear that this thing don't play. And if you don't believe that, just test it and see what happens. So you'll see that you could be on the losing end of this. And I'm not trying to stoke up fear. I'm not trying to stoke up, you know, any of that sort of stuff. But it just amazes me that I just was talking to a group, and there's a lot of people who spew misinformation all over the place. And just because that information is consistent with what you like to believe, don't make it right.
Dr. Mason, I was talking to one of my family members that kept saying, well, you know, I don't believe in COVID. I was like, really? Because COVID believes in you so much that it's looking for you to grow in. You know what I'm saying? COVID believes in you, whether you believe it or not. It believes in you, you know? And so I think, like you're saying, it's just very important. We have an opportunity to make sure, like, I think we talked about this. The way we know what happens with our flu vaccine is we look east, we look in other countries, we see what's going on there. We predict the travel patterns. How many people are going to get on this plane? How many people are going to come, you know, from there? And we anticipate that variant or that disease will be in our country. Therefore, we make a vaccine against it, right? So now, while we see the variant, and now it's already over here, but when we see the variant heavy in other places, just like in November of, I done lost the year because of COVID. See, I have to help me. November. Oh, it's COVID-19. That means that 19. when we looked at November, December 2019, we can and we should have anticipated that that virus was going to come over here. Now we see the Delta variant. Like Dr. Mason said, let's believe, and it's not because forks over knives. It's not because, and we should watch that diet, but let's just take his word. Fat meat is definitely greasy, and it's not good for our community, you know. And so let's do it. We have the chance. The vaccine is now. There was a time when vaccine wasn't readily available, and people were making all kinds of algorithms to make barriers and stuff like that. That's not the case right now. You can contact the Chicago Department of Public Health. You can contact Nikki can give you a contact. You can contact your local federally qualified health centers, City of Chicago, and get the vaccine of your choice. And I think that's important.
You are absolutely right. And, you know, this wealth of information is so rich. I can talk about it now only because I never tell people I'm not home because you don't know who want to come visit your house when you're not there. Y'all get it, right? But I left Friday and had to go south. And I drove to New Orleans and I got back today. Non-stop, turned around, did what I need to do, and turned right back around and came back. Each time I stopped in a gas station, even in downstate Illinois, when I was trying to get out of Illinois to get there, when I stopped at the gas station to get gas, and of course I had on a mask, and nobody wore masks. When I got to Louisiana, I stopped. When I was in Mississippi, nobody had on a mask. When I got to New Orleans, nobody had on a mask. I said, well, people were looking at me like I had 3 heads. I said, I'm going home, the only person COVID free. Because these people just don't believe in masks. This one guy in the gas station actually said to me, oh, you think it's real, huh? I said, mm-hmm. I wasn't even talking. I didn't even want to open my mouth between the 2 masks that I had on. I said, you don't think it's real? I don't even want you to breathe. I was just nodding. I did nod. He was like, no. Okay. Emily says, I agree with Dr. Miller. What is wrong with us? Our community is hit hardest, yet we are anti-vaxxers. This has nothing to do with Tuskegee. All right, Evelyn, from Evelyn's Food Love over there. If you ever want some good grits, you better stop by Evelyn. Dr. Jones said, Johnson vaccine. Why?
Nikki, could you repeat that? We had a hard time hearing you.
I think I'm going to assume and ask the question, doctors, are there reasons I should or should not get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? I can go first, or I'll leave it up to one of my colleagues to go first, but I'm going to assume that's the question. And then, Nikki, when you chime back in, let me know if I just messed up and that was not the question.
No, just read Walter Jones' question.
It says, should people trust the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and why? Go ahead, Maya.
I think so. I'm one of the doctors. Should you trust the science? Yes, you should. After Johnson & Johnson had a period of time where it was off the market and then put back on, should you trust it? Absolutely. Now, what I really want to focus people on is that there are 3 options, right? So if you do not trust the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and today is not the day that I'm going to convince you that Johnson & Johnson is okay. If you are a woman, 18, I believe 50, that was 48, but 50, and then there was one 56. If you are, and you just like, you know, just to clarify, that's the group that had the clots, you know, just to clarify, and then say, well, that's the group that believe originally had the clots, so put it back on the market. And so if you are there, then Pfizer is available, Moderna is available, because one of the things I don't want, and I find myself doing, and I see it, you know, how you can do something to other people, is get caught on one thing and let that stop me from taking my try. There are 3 vaccines available. If that one is not one for you, there are 2 other options.
Dr. Maya, that was not understood, because I don't know, you were, it wasn't you, something happened with the technology. and it wasn't clear. I don't know if you want to say something again, and we can tell you whether or not it's coming through clearly or not.
Can you hear me now?
Still pretty much garbled up. You're still garbled
Okay.
right now.
Should somebody?
So I'm going to just step in for a minute. And the answer is, if it were me, I would trust it. And the reason why I would trust it is there were 5 horses in the race. Only 3 of them completed the race. From my perspective, the other 2 that were kept out for pretty good reasons. There's another vaccine that's created in a foreign country. It's now clearly failing. So from that perspective, I think the regulatory process is really very good. They've been really very careful. And when some problem comes up, there's a lot of transparency, and they let the doctors know. So that when you go into the clinic, they will ask you those questions. Do you have any of these conditions? If they do, they may choose to give a different type of vaccine or a different maker. So from my perspective, I trust the regulatory process. I would go in and get the shot.
Dr. Hansen?
Yeah, I think the probability that a person who gets Johnson & Johnson would have a reaction is very low. So when, again, I'm speaking the same language of Dr. Maya, which is if you have 3 choices and you're afraid of one choice, you got 2 choices other than that one choice. But if it were I, as Dr. Graham suggested, I would absolutely get that vaccine. I'm always amazed at the comparison of COVID versus a vaccine, and I am very afraid when you sign death certificates as a living. I'm very afraid of being on the other end of that pen. And when I look at the number of people I've lost personally as a physician, it's hard for me personally or for my family to make a decision other than be vaccinated. So when I think about, 1 in a million chance, it's just like, am I not going to get a condo because of what happened to that building in Florida? Am I not going to live in a condo? The chances that would happen is so low that I would have to just use my rational brain and say, I'm probably going to be comfortable living in a condo. Of course, I'm going to make sure they make it safe. But at the end of the day, we have to be rational and look at data and numbers, and we're scientists. And I've seen so many people succumb to, I've not had one patient vaccinated get sick. That's just been my personal experience. And I've had a whole lot of patients who did not get vaccinated get sick. So again, the number of people involved in the studies where some of in particular the females, it was still a small number, even if you look at that. So I would encourage anybody who is looking at their options, if that's an option for you, absolutely. And a lot of my patients like it because it's one shot. So I think you have to decide what's best for you and your family.
I think it was 1.8 million.
So he has the same problem that Maya's having.
Right.
That a lot of people are.
Dr. Miller has it.
Yeah.
Does the computer have the virus?
Maybe we need to go to the next. Yeah, right. We got a computer virus. Maybe we need to go to the next question.
Right.
Dr. Maya, are you still garbled? Let's hear from you, Dr. Maya.
Can you hear me now?
No, Maya, go out and
come back in.
I think that's going to straighten that out because that's what I had to do.
I would just go out and come back in, Maya.
All right. Just so you know, I'm going to read a couple of our statements here on the side. We're waiting on everyone to sign back in. Sister Bonnie says, thanks, doctor. Evelyn says, yes, Dr. Hampton. Love Dr. Mason, period. Laugh out loud. Nellie King says, I believe. Audrey Jaycock says, if we didn't have the vaccine, minorities would be saying that they didn't want us to have it and that they're trying to kill us. Yet we have it and we refuse to take it. Linda Johnson says, I am echoing that. She says, I am echoing that. I see we got Dr. Green back, Maya.
Yeah.
Hey, can you hear me now?
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Dr. Graham just kind of reiterated, or Dr. Hampton, reiterated what I was saying is, even if today's not the day where, say I'm a woman, I'm 18 to 48, the outlier was 56. Say I'm of that age, of that group that they suspected had higher incidence of clotting with the Johnson & Johnson. Say I'm one of those people. And no matter what you say, I'm in that group. No matter what you say, I'm not going to take the Johnson & Johnson. We have two other options available, right? We have Moderna, we have Pfizer. And so I don't want, like, I know in my personal life, I've seen as I grow myself get caught up on one aspect of one vaccine and then say, oh, no, I'm just not doing anything. We don't want to do that, right? We have two other options that have been shown to be protective of death and severe disease. So you still got two other options, you know, and that's that's great about where we are right now.
Okay. You came in clear and great, and then some type of way it began to fade. We're going to keep working on that. I'm going to take a question off Instagram really quickly. And that question on Instagram says, I'm wondering if Illinois is ready for H10N3, the 2021 variant of the flu. So go ahead, Dr. Hampton. You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, we're always ready because every year we see what's happening in countries out like China, and we look and see what's happening there, and then we modify our vaccines in such a way to prepare for that. Now, when it comes to flu vaccines in particular, we've actually done really well. When I looked at the data from the previous year, because of all of the mask wearing and social distancing, we just had a very mild flu season. I actually may have not treated one person for the flu for the previous flu season. I couldn't believe it. So I think that we're going to be in pretty good shape. I think there's going to be a large percentage of us who are going to continue to use those mitigating strategies, washing hands, wearing masks, things like that. So even as things start to lighten up, I think that we're going to be in good shape. So it looks like we're having some technical issues for me as well.
No, it's Pete. Pete is frozen. He's been
okay. Oh, okay, good. Okay, just making sure. So I just think that, again, when I have patients in front of me, I say, what strategies can you have to protect yourself? Well, sometimes it's getting a pneumonia vaccine, because guess what? If you get COVID, you'll end up dying from pneumonia. COVID just kind of made you more vulnerable. Well, you can also get flu, and so what we're trying to do is to encourage people to do as many mitigating strategies as they can so that they can protect themselves. And that includes being as healthy as possible. So even after this broadcast, this is an exercise night. So do you exercise? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you keeping your stress down? So all of those things we'll continue to encourage.
Okay. Wonderful. I think we're doing better now. I think everybody isn't as frozen as they were before. Our next question says, how does my family history really affect my health? So Dr. Mason gave that lovely eye look. I love your statement you made last week when you told Nurse Henry, don't do stuff to her liver to make it angry to have to even detox it. So you gave me one of those looks again. Come on with that look.
No, what was the question again, Nikki? What was the question?
So her question is, Let me go right back to it. Her question says, how does your family history really affect my health? How does my family history really affect my health?
It's a great question. It's really a great question. And you got to tease out what family history really means. There are some diseases that are passed genetically from one generation to the next, but I would say the overwhelming majority of the diseases that we deal with are not in that category. That the overwhelming, see, the problem is, and when I talk about family history, what gets passed down oftentimes is family dietary patterns. And the same kind of things that people had from previous generations, that because of the way people ate and the way that we're eating and the way we're passing those dietary patterns, some that were learned from the way we ate before, some of them because our country is engaged in making sure that our foods are being engineered a certain way, and that we are being moved and programmed to look and want things that are salty, that are crunchy, that are a bit oily. So if you look at that, that's all your potato chips, popcorn, a lot of those sorts of things. In addition to that, we are frying, even though we have data that clearly says that some of these processed foods like bacon and what we used to call lunch meat growing up, but these are the salamis and bolognas and all those other kinds of things that we eat are also not good for us. The difference is that our parents, I would say my parents, because being almost 70, my parents is totally different generation than most of the people still in this table. But they, in addition to what they ate, they had a different level of physical exertion and activity that we don't have today. So even though they may not have eaten as well, what they ate was far less processed than what we're eating today. What they ate, they also did enough physical activity to sort of counteract some of what they ate. And we're having less physical activity now than we had before. And what they ate was not nearly as processed and not nearly as artificial as a lot of the things that we're eating. They have probably no such thing as turkey bacon, for example. There's no anatomical part of the turkey you can slice to get bacon. So it is a man-made, manufactured sort of thing. They didn't have a lot of that. And I'll say this and stop. When I went down south to visit my relatives, most of the stuff that we ate had just come out of the garden not that long ago. And even the chicken that was eaten was walking around about 4 hours before it ended up in the oven. So there's a lot of things that are different. Right now, one of the largest reservoirs for hormone ingestion is from our chickens, because we're re-engineering the chicken. Don't take my word for any of this. A lot of movies you can go watch now that are true. But we have changed the time it takes from a little chicken to grow to a big chicken by a number of weeks. We've shortened it by engineering these chickens. We've re-engineered the chickens to create bigger breasts. We've got so much hormones in our food supply that we have our young girls starting their periods much earlier than they used to. So there's a lot of things that are going on that we have to think about. And we just can't say, because my parents ate it, it's good for me. But your parents ate, if they were my parents' age, is a lot different than what you're eating today.
I'll only add that it is not unreasonable to look at your family history as a starting point. So if multiple family members got dementia, multiple family members had heart attacks, multiple family members had strokes, multiple family members had cancer, it's not unreasonable to start there. And then so I would start there and say, what are the things that impact my family the most? Number two, then I would say, well, what's the most important things that have impacted the country as a whole? And we already know heart disease is number one, not only in America, but in the world. 17 million people every year die from heart disease. Every single year. Let me say it one more time, 17 million people. So you start, and then you look at those, and then you say, well, what can I do to mitigate those risks? And that's what Dr. Mason is suggesting. So there are certain things you can do. We know number one is obesity is the number one preventable risk factor for premature death. Number two is probably smoking. Thankfully, we don't really smoke like we did in the past, but we still have people who smoke. That's why it's still number two. Our diet is probably the one thing we can do to mitigate our risk. And then you think about other obvious things like, am I getting enough? You'd be surprised how many people. I just saw a patient today who works 16 hours a day. Now, I'm not sure how you do that, but they work 16 hours a day. Now, if you're in a urgent situation that requires something in the short term, maybe you can survive doing that. But imagine how much sleep that person gets, and imagine how vulnerable they are to illness. So it's a lot of things that we need to think about. Are we in toxic relationships? If you've been working on your marriage for 10 years and you still in a dysfunctional marriage, maybe that's not going to be the best marriage for you. So we got to think about those types of things. We got to think about, my environment. Is it possible I can put myself in a better environment so that I can thrive? I mean, try to put a rose flower amongst weeds and see what happens. That rose is probably not going to survive. So it's really a holistic approach. And although your genetics should be on the table as a discussion point, it should not be you should think about what you can do that your family members didn't do. And then you learn these things and then you change. And then if you're blessed, you'll then look at the rest of your family and then you'll maybe be a role model for them. And then you don't have to tell them to do anything. They're going to tell you, they're going to come to you and say, girl, what you doing? And then all of a sudden you'll be their role model. You'll be somebody that they're going to look up to, and they're going to be very interested in what you did to be healthy.
Well, sleep is definitely important. I've had none all weekend. I've had 2 hours worth of sleep. I'm holding my eyes open with toothpicks. And as soon as we are done here tonight, I'm going to lay down and I'm going to ask all the people who are texting me, I will call you tomorrow because it's not going to happen tonight. I need some sleep. Tamika Thomas says, hey, Uncle Terry. She also says, Dr. Hampton is talking good. He is talking good. Virginia Knight says she absolutely replanted our gardens. We planted the gardens. And she talks about how great that is. Our next question says, what is GERD?
It's esophageal reflux disease. It's basically when acid that's in the stomach comes up through the esophagus. And that happens due to there's a little band of tissue that's supposed to keep the acid separated from the stomach and the esophagus.
And basically, I'll just add to Brother Pete. So when the acid goes into your esophagus, which is your throat, it should not. Now imagine something that is powerful enough to take a steak. We've all seen the little science experiment where they take a piece of meat and they'll just sit it in the acid and then it just dissolves away. Well, imagine your stomach being built for that, and it has the right kind of lining to protect the stomach from the acid it's creating. Well, imagine that acid going where it shouldn't go. It goes into your throat, and all of a sudden now you have those symptoms of heartburn. So, and that can lead to, things like not just a burning sensation, but you can get a cough. The acid can go up into your teeth and cause dental problems, dental erosions. You can definitely get a cough. It can even cause halitosis. You can have bad breath because of that. And I've had patients even have coughing problems. So the answer is, what do you do about it? The problem with our current health system is that we don't treat problems by getting to the root cause. A lot of times when we talk about diet and stuff like that, that's root cause, that's getting to the root cause and you fix it. Instead, what we do is we give you a pill. And that pill is called omeprazole, pantoprazole. If it's got a OLE at the end, that's a medicine that cuts off the acid. You also have these proton pump inhibitors like, famotidine and Zantac, and it binds with the acid. So one thing tells your stomach to stop making acid, proton pump inhibitors. Then you have the other medicines that bind with the acid. But the problem is you still got to digest that food. So you've turned all the acid down. That's going to cause all kinds of downstream side effects because you can't digest your food. So all these large particles of food are not, they're going to go further down, and that's going to cause you to get sick as well. But the point is, so the question is, why is that little valve not closing like it should to keep the acid from going up? And one of the number one causes is obesity. Almost every patient that I treat for obesity, their reflux goes away. It's gastroesophageal, GERD. It goes away. Another thing you can do that's very simple, believe it or not, the same pill we take for sleep, which is melatonin, also helps to tighten that lower esophageal sphincter. So if you take that at the end of the day, that'll help to tighten it a little bit while you're working on your weight. The other thing you can do is something called, there's a licorice substance called DGL, Dog Goat Larry. You can get it at the health food store. It'll provide a coat. It'll coat your throat to protect it from the acid. So while it's okay to take the medicine temporarily, it's probably best to work on weight issues. It's probably best to take those natural supplements. I even made a video. It's called Natural Treatment for GERD. So if you search that with Dr. Tony Hampton on YouTube, you can watch it's about a 25-minute video that'll go into more detail. But this is something that you can absolutely reverse. You don't have to live with it for the rest of your life. It's just about, kind of getting your body in better condition so you won't have to take these medicines.
The thing, Tony, to mention too is that eventually what can happen if you let this GERD keep going, it can change the lining of the esophagus and increase your risk for throat cancer or esophageal cancer. So it really is a big deal to take care of. I mean, on top of that, it's very uncomfortable for patients. They have a lot of belching. They have very, a nasty taste in the back of their throat. So it's really, really irritating. And people really just can't eat. So some people lose a lot of weight because of it. So I really appreciate when you mentioned a lot of these natural remedies for it as well.
Well, Linda Johnson says that she will be bringing salads to the cookouts and picnics and other outings she's working on. And she will be taking salads to picnics. All right. Does tinnitus, am I pronouncing that properly? Does tinnitus go away? What is tinnitus?
Yeah, it's. I'm only talking a lot because I'm concerned about the audio for my colleagues.
Dr. Miller, they're all frozen, and
they're looking
frozen too.
Yeah, they're frozen. Yes. They're frozen. Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, tinnitus is tomato. Tinnitus, tinnitus. I don't really care how you pronounce it, but it's a pain in the butt. That's what it is. So all that is when I think most people would argue.
The ringing of the ear?
It is. It's a ringing of the ear, and when you get it, it's very annoying because you keep hearing it, and it's particularly annoying when you're out and about, very active. You're distracted, so it's not so bad. But when you're trying to relax at the end of the day, like at this hour, it's very annoying. So there's probably a lot of causes for that, but the ultimate cause is that the nerves get damaged, right? So now my brain is a little different than most brains, and it goes back to what I said earlier, root cause. So there are many different causes of tinnitus, right? Or tinnitus. But one of the causes, believe it or not, is when you think about diabetics, right? They have a sugar problem, and all that extra sugar floating around causes inflammation. So think about the diabetics who get neuropathy. They get problems with the tingling in their, in their toes. They don't feel. They can't. The reason why we end up with amputations partly is because the nerves are not working. They get an infection. They don't feel it because the nerves are not working. And then by the time they get treated for it, it's too late. It's really blood vessels and nerves. But what I'm getting at is that the nerves get damaged because of the sugar. So I've actually seen patients because your body, the ear is a little different. Unlike other parts of your body that store sugar and something called glycogen, your ear doesn't have any of that stuff. So it looks like Dr. Maya is cleared.
Yeah,
Everybody's
all
cleared up.
unfrozen at the
That's
same
weird.
time.
That's weird. So we'll
They
take it,
all
but let me
together. They're
talk
all
real quick.
together.
They're all together. So it's something going on. It must have been the problem with the server. But anyway, so bottom line is what I found is that when I talk to patients, I found that a lot of patients who were having this problem were actually diabetic, right? So I looked it up. I went online. This happened like a few years ago when I was writing my book. And I found that, I found a study that said 84% of the people who have insulin, high insulin levels, have this, had this condition. So it's very common when you have insulin resistance. So what I tell people, if you fix your insulin resistance problem for a portion of the patients with this, a lot of them actually get better. It's a very frustrating condition because the docs like myself will refer to the ear, nose, and throat docs. And they'll look at them, they won't find it. They may even do an MRI and they don't find nothing. And so the question is, what do you do? Well, one of the things you can do is you get your insulin level down. How do you get your insulin level down? Stop eating all this starchy, sugary food. And that's just one thing. There's also some of the B vitamins are also helpful. And for people who are trying to be a little bit more practical, they have masking. You can go to Amazon. They got this sound masking devices that you can wear that'll kind of help with it. But that'll only help with the symptoms. But the real treatment is to understand where the inflammation is coming from, which leads to the nerve problem, which leads to the condition. So this is one of the most frustrating conditions any of the docs on the panel have ever treated. It's very frustrating. Trust me.
All right,
I just wanted to add one more thing quickly to what Dr. Hampton was saying, and that you got to remember when we start talking about foods, fats, and carbohydrates. Carbohydrates usually are like four calories per gram, but fats are 9. So you get a whole lot more opportunity to get excess energy from fat than you do from carbohydrates. Sometimes we eat a lot more of the carbohydrates, particularly hyper concentrated carbohydrates with a lot more sugar, where you get a lot more of that. But I want people to understand that for the diabetic for whom this problem is really a problem, can be really a problem, you've got to remember that the cells of the pancreas, because the one thing that we're talking, that Dr. Hampton's saying, you have too much insulin and it's not working, or it's just not working. That's why you're having a problem. And so what you need to do is you've got to change. There's a number of things. We don't have time to get into it because we're already at the end of the show, but maybe we'll open the next show with the conversation about this, because this is an important thing for folks to understand. And, people talk about low carbs. There's no better low carb diet than plant-based. If you eat totally plant-based, that's about as low carb as you can get. There's very difficult to, even when you're eating if you're eating a lot of fats, particularly saturated fats, those fats that are solid at room temperature, those are the fats that are bad. Those are the fats that are going to cause the irritation that he just talked about. It's going to cause a lot of other problems. And we need to make sure that we're eating as little of that as possible. You saw, in fact, on the video I showed last week at the meeting, where Dr. Neil Barnard talked about these bad fats and what they can do. So let's really make sure we balance the conversation, because it's not just about the carbs, it's about the fats too.
And one more thing. Well, go ahead. Let me just say this. The fat on your body is a perfect example of the fat you can use for energy. So if Dr. Mason is saying you have 9 kilocalories of energy from fat versus 4 from protein and carbs, right? Then you have a a boatload of energy on your body. If you can train your body to burn that as fuel, you'll never be hungry. You'll always have energy. So that's one of the methods that I teach my patients to do.
All right. So our last question of the evening is, what are the signs of a stroke?
Well, you've seen the FAST mnemonic, F-A-S-T.
Yeah.
And so F stands for what? Facial drooping. Arm, R-H stands for what? Arm. Usually it starts for one side of the arm, right? You can't lift the arms. S stands for what?
Speech.
Your speech becomes slurred. People can't speak well when they have. Huh?
I think somebody else said it. Speech difficult. Okay. Somebody else said
she was answering you and she was muted. So go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. And the T stands for time. It's time to get moving. You need to call somebody to get that person to preferably a stroke center. And according to what we have put in place, we have identified and made sure that the paramedics understand the stroke centers in the city, and people are supposed to be taken to those centers where they have doctors that can help you reverse that stroke with different techniques that they have. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but that's what you got to remember. And when you see somebody that's face droop, or they can't lift their arm and the speech is slurred, that's time to get moving.
Awesome. Well, of course, we have.
You messing up.
But of course,
there you go.
What's the matter, Dr. Mason? Oh, okay.
Now you're okay.
We're at that time again, and of course I know that you guys hate when we have to share that we have reached that time mark. But as Dr. Mason stated, we are going to start our conversation with where we left off at, talking about tinnitus and how extensive that is, and we'll go from there on next week. Just want to remind everyone to wash your hands and do it the proper way as we talked about earlier, making sure that you get that thumb. Make sure that you wear your mask when you're in a setting where you're not sure if you're at that 70% of herd immunity. And let's remember, there is no new data about the whole social distancing thing. So let's make sure that we pay attention to that. We're going to go around really quickly, and we're going to have our until next Monday. And then, of course, our congressman will have our closing statements. So Dr. Douglas Graham, until next Monday.
I was just reflecting on what Dr. Mason said last week, and we've all talked about getting the vaccination to protect yourself. But I think about protecting your family, protecting your neighbors, protecting your friends. So if we think not just about ourselves, but about others, it's something we need to do for our entire community.
Wonderful. Dr. James Miller, who is now unfrozen just as well, you're until next Monday.
Again, we're still pushing get vaccinated. We want everybody to be able to get out and to enjoy themselves and to be able to mingle. And the way that we can do that is get a high number of people vaccinated. Then we can just have a big party then, but we can't do that safely unless we get more people vaccinated.
Absolutely. Dr. Terry Mason, you're until next Monday. You're muted, Dr. Mason.
I think what you want to do is think about what you've heard tonight. You heard some good advice. Take what you can take from what we've given you, and where appropriate, use it. Obviously get the vaccine, but at the same time, we want you to eat better and get your sleep too, because all of those things help you. And so hopefully that will be something you'll incorporate between now and next week.
All right. Dr. Tony Hampton, you're until next Monday.
It's very important that you recognize that you are, so powerful, and that you have so much potential, and that you were uniquely created. And no matter what your struggles have been, you can overcome and you can get better. I think about who I was even 5 years ago. And I think about who I was. I go back to when I first started with Advocate Aurora. I was a doctor motivated to help people. But I was sleeping at the intersections because I wasn't getting my rest. I was tired, exhausted, burnt out, didn't know if I wanted to do this forever. And now I go to work with so much energy, I got enough time at the end of the day to spend time with you guys. So there is absolutely no reason why you can't improve, why you can't get better, and be a role model for your family. So let's take this opportunity. Since we are the survivors, we've survived a pandemic, we're doing well. And let's be a role model for all those people in our lives and beyond who we can motivate and inspire so that we can have a better tomorrow. So I thank you guys for the opportunity.
Great. Wilbur Cook says, great again. Tamika Thomas says, great show. Evelyn says, thank you. Linda Johnson says, again, thank you all for your time and your knowledge. Dr. Maya, you're until next Monday.
Hey, to all my Black kings out there who are fathers, I'm so sorry I missed it, so I'm going to read really fast. Can you all hear me? Because I want to make sure y'all get this. Okay, I'm going to read real fast my input. This is from National Center for Health Statistics. Black fathers are more involved with their younger children, feeding, bathing, and dressing, reading to their younger children, and playing with them daily. Next statistic. I'm moving fast, Nikki. For older children, these fathers are also more likely to help with homework and talk to their children about their day. That's from the National Center for Health Statistics. This is from CDC. Black fathers are more likely to have performed caregiving duties compared to white and Hispanic fathers. 70% of Black fathers are doing that. That's from the CDC. My last one is from Professor Laura Tack at Cornell University. Once non-resident, meaning sometimes the kids don't live with the fathers, unfortunately, Black fathers are actually more likely to remain involved with their children. Shout out to my Black fathers. Happy belated Father's Day. But when you're an excellent Black king father, every day is Father's Day.
All right. Our very own Dr. Pete, you're until next Monday.
Well, thank you, Maya. You just pumped me up. I appreciate it. I
didn't pump you up like Nikki. Nikki is shout out to Nikki. She's like the greatest. Our hype man, woman. Yeah.
Ultimate hype.
I don't know who she's talking about.
Yeah, I just want to leave people with the idea that, health is is a state of complete mental and physical and well-being. Don't consider health just one thing. And like Dr. Hampton mentioned, pay attention to all the intangibles, your relationships, your sleeping, get out and exercise, enjoy the weather, and pay attention to how you feel, and it's okay to go see a therapist if you need to. So that's until next Monday.
All right, Congressman.
We have put a lot of emphasis on diet, nutrition, follow-up, and follow-through. And I know that many people have serious difficulty altering their diets because they've become so accustomed to knowing what they like and eating what they like and not changing it. Obesity is a big problem in African American life. Big problem. So if you're having trouble with the diet, the weather is now great. You can go out and walk a little bit. You can run a little bit. You don't have to do it fast. You can do it at whatever pace you set. You can start a little bit at a time. Maybe the first day it's a block. Maybe the next day you might do 2 blocks. The next week or so you might have moved it up. And so if you practice a combination of all of these things combined, probably not doing as much of any of them as you would need to, but want to or like to. But if you mix them up and do a little bit and take advantage of the information that we keep getting, I got a strange feeling that you are going to feel better, be more productive, and make the undertaker wait to benefit from your leaving. And so it just makes a lot of good sense all the way around. Thank you all for another exciting evening. And those who have not had your vaccine, July the 7th at the great church over in the North Lawndale community, and July the 9th, right out in front of our office at 2815 West 5th Avenue. We will be ready to shoot you up, and it won't hurt. Thanks to the whole team, and please have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and hope to see you all next week. All
Good
right.
night. Until next
Good
Monday.
night. Till next Monday.